Welcome back to The Ballad of Dena and Andrea, a podcast showcasing songs and conversations in reaction to the story of Andrea Yates and Dena Schlosser, two women who murdered their children in the early 2000s. I wrote an album based on their story in the style of Appalachian murder ballads to create empathetic myths about these mothers. And with this podcast, I've been able to sit down with friends to talk openly about issues that come up from these songs, like religion, mental health, misogyny, our failing justice system, motherhood, grief, and more. Each episode, I'll tell a bit of the story, bring in a friend to chat, and share a song. Please note, in this podcast, we will discuss postpartum psychosis and depression, domestic abuse, suicide, infanticide, and religious zealotry. Please take care of yourself while listening. Also note, when I use the word women, I aim to include anyone who has identified as a woman, female, or femme at any point in their journey. Okay, here we go. I want to talk about the overwhelming feeling I get, and maybe you do too, when everything starts to blend into one big rage spiral. When I think about the torture that trans kids and people are going through right now under our government, to the latest rights rolled back by some prick senator. Oh God, just getting ignored in a bar or during a meeting. The fact that femicide is a word globally. Maternal death rates for women of color. The fact that high school football players, Supreme Court justices, and fucking presidents get away with rape. Coaches, priests, and doctors molest our kids. Missing and murdered Indigenous women in the U.S. and Canada. And one thought snowballs into everything. It's all connected, and I am fully enraged. It feels particularly female. And I'm reminded of this phrase: I brought you into this world, and I can take you out. And I think it's the second power that has been stripped from women and femmes and made completely masculine. And I want that power back. I want wrath and might and fear. I want revolution. Enough is enough. There's murder in the Bible, there's murder on my mind. Feeling hot tonight, but not for your love, for your motherfucking kind. I'm sick of your musk and your meaty hands, you entitled piece of shit. You play stupid songs on the jukebox and sing along whenever they say bitch. If you touch me once again, or shove between me and the bar, this short little shit's gonna have to run you over in her hybrid car. See, I got sisters all over this place, and it's a fucking powder keg. And if we see one pussy grab tonight, we'll choke you out with the tap from that keg. I see you fucker try to follow her home after one too many drinks. We'll just keep walking, brother, unless you want to smell your own stink. Yeah, I'm smaller than you, and I'm smarter than you, and that really gets you mad. But before you think about raising your hands, remember, I'm a lot, period. There's murder in the Bible, there's murder on my mind. I'm crazy about you, baby, and I always get my man. I'd like to tell you a fantasy. I go to a stand-up show, a guy tells a rape joke, duh. I meet him after the show at the bar where someone roofied me and tell him that's a stupid joke. He calls me a cunt. I say thank you, brush my hand across his crotch and mouth, let's go to the alley. He follows, explaining his joke. Once we're there, I reach into my purse and pull out a cute little pink pen knife. I stab him in the throat, right in the Adam's apple, just so he'll stop fucking talking. But his weak screams echo into the alley over the gurgling mess of his neck, so deftly, femininely, I slice off his dick and shove it in his mouth. It looks hilarious, him sucking and gagging on his own cock. As I'm standing over him laughing, regretting I didn't get it on video, a group of sex workers appears in the alley. None of them over 15, so I'm not sure if I'm supposed to call them sex workers or human trafficking victims. Their faces are blank, all dressed in stilettos they glide over broken glass and garbage and dead rats to stand over the comedian. Funny, one of them says in an accent I can't quite place, somewhere between the land of the free and the home of the brave. They are joined by more women, trans women, young women, old women, every color and all spectrums, walking home in groups through the alley to avoid men like him. But tonight, they meet you. And in a hail of high heels and sensible shoes, you run like menstrual blood through the cracks in the asphalt. Come on. It was just one guy drunk at a bar alone. He was asking for it. Here I am in all my glory, the spirit of Jezebel, here to slay your high school football prophet, your Supreme Court appointed cucks. I suggest you get on your knees now and show some fucking respect to the one who bore you and the one that loved you and the one that got away. You may be standing in power tonight, but tomorrow is another day. There's murder in the Bible, there's murder on my mind. Feeling hot tonight, but not for your love, for your motherfucking kind. There's murder in the Bible. There's murder in the Bible. There's murder in the Bible. Okay, now that I got some of that out, I want to bring in a good friend of mine who is a solutions person, an actor, a teaching artist, and certified very good person. We discuss her work as an interpreter, the importance of independent health clinics and education, dramatic Catholic rituals, periods, grieving what you thought life would be and what it turns out being, and if God exists. You know, no biggie, just light stuff. We will talk about healthcare, but we are not doctors. Please consult your doctors for any actual medical advice. Oh, yes, let's both take a sip so we're hydrated.
Sip. Yes, let's hydrate.
Now, let's make each other angry talking about all this bullshit.
What?
No.
Me angry? Never.
Right? No, me either. I am so calm about all the state of the world. Hello, Marta.
Hello, Becky.
Thank you for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
Doctor's office.
I haven't seen you in forever.
Oh, I know.
It's been ages.
Marta's my roommate.
Yes.
We're roomies. First of all, tell us a little bit about what you do. Can you talk about your job in the health industry? Marta is an actress and artist, but she has a day job that puts her in the health industry, which I will let you talk about.
Yes. I am a medical interpreter. I'm a freelance medical interpreter, which means that I work for several agencies and then they send me out on assignment because there is a very big need for interpretation services. I'm a Spanish interpreter specifically. And I work a lot in pediatrics. And then I also work at adult hospitals, in schools. Basically, I'm all over the place as an interpreter in the medical field. As an interpreter, I'm just in the room to repeat what is being said and making sure that the provider and the patient and, today the patient's parents are aware and are clearly communicating. So that basically is my job. It's to facilitate communication between the patient and the provider or the patient, provider, and caregiver. And if I'm doing my job correctly, it's almost as if I'm not in the room.
Right.
But I am.
But you are. No, and then you have your own reactions and stuff, which we're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. What are some of the frustrations of communication? What are some of the frustrations in the lack of communication between the doctors and patients?
My job is to be very clear about them understanding each other and making sure that there is communication. But I think some of the frustration sometimes comes with, obviously there's a cultural divide. Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's a class divide, educational divide. I'd say that a lot of the doctors that I work with know how to work with interpreters and and are very good at communicating. But maybe sometimes the parent or the patient is not ready to receive certain information. Or sometimes a lot of it has to do with basic understanding. Sometimes I'll find myself for instance with a geneticist. And geneticists are a special breed of doctor, mainly because they are so smart that, I'll walk in before the meeting and the head doctor is that went over my head. And then I'm okay, I'm supposed to...
Put that in
I'm supposed to interpret this in layman's term for a mother or a father or a patient that maybe has a sixth grade education, if that.
Oh boy.
And so that's hard. So you end up giving along with the doctor, interpreting a biology lesson, a basic biology lesson. And this is just specific to me with the population that I work with. As an interpreter. Because sometimes you get people that have come in from out of the country and are very well-versed, educated, and I'm just there to interpret and it goes smooth. But where it tends to not be as smooth is where there is a class difference, where there is an educational divide, and trying to understand basic concepts. And so that's where it can get frustrating. In particular with doing education, for instance, how to administer medications or, how do you change a tracheostomy tube and things like that where or how do you, put the medication into the G tube, which is like a feeding tube that basically goes into the stomach. Things like that, I think it gets difficult.
Yeah.
Or I think culturally, the one that like the interpreters and we all just kind of, I don't want to put this in a way where it's like we're not laughing at the patient, but it's like it's a cultural thing where, and our mothers do it, like my mom does it, where it's like, Mom, you're asking them a specific question and then they have to give you like the whole background.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, and it's like, the question would be like, when was the last time they had a fever? And it was like, well, I was born in 1952 and in this small ranch, and then I made my way, and then it's like, just answer the question. Right. When did you have the fever?
Picture it, Sicily.
yeah, exactly.
These concepts are difficult in your native language, or
yes.
in your first language. So that must be really confusing all around sometimes.
Yes, yeah. It can be very confusing. We have something in, you said layman's terms, so the way interpreters use it, it's high register, low register. Oh. So high register would be like, I'm going to use all the medical terms. I'm going to, it's as if I'm speaking to the doctor and they're just using all the, scientific terms as opposed to, let me see what, I'm like, what my brain is fried
right, you've been working all day. You're like...
Yeah, it's like, it's like a hemorrhage, a cerebral hemorrhage, something like that. Where it's like, it's a stroke. It's sure. Like, like all this, the other day, and I'd have to look it up, like the scientific term for like spina bifida, which is like, and I was actually in the spina bifida clinic today, of all places. But like emesis, like that means to throw up, like barf. Emesis.
I didn't know that.
They'll say like emesis, and then it's like the doctors will use that amongst themselves, but then it's like, did he throw up?
Right.
Like
did your kid puke?
Yeah, it's like boogers, mucus, things like that. It's just like
which color is the snot?
And then my brain has to like get these words out quickly in real time, which is great for my ADHD because there's no putting it off. Like right. I have to do it in the moment, but it can be.
Oh man, that you are like on.
So you're on. I think one of the things about communication, now that I'm getting warmed up, I'm like, oh, now I can think about these things. There is a tendency, and I mean, even us, just when we're speaking, to go in circles. Yeah. And sometimes if a concept isn't being grasped, they want to go back to it, and they keep going back to it. And then, at a certain point, my mind will start to fatigue. And then I get, as an interpreter, I need to be able to do my job. But people don't understand how exhausting it is.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
So people are like, oh, you just get to talk. And then it's like, no.
No, it's not. Different languages and making them make sense together in medical industry.
And they are, and you have to make sure that it's absolutely clear because people are making life-changing decisions based on this. Yeah. So it's just, I like it. It's the stakes are high, and then sometimes they're not always high.
For sure.
Like sometimes, a lot of the times, like if I'm working in the emergency room, a lot of times it's ear infections, and people not knowing what a fever is. That's another frustration. That's like, again, lack of education. Wow. Like people are like, oh, he had a fever, and it's like, oh, how high was it? 98.
Oh.
And then it's like, then the doctors have to do education, and sometimes they are like, oh, okay, 98. They choose their moments too. You could tell, like if they're on their last hour of their shift, they're like, okay. Oh, so he felt hot. Okay, You
really see a lot of human choices.
You do.
And like watching people get tired or like seeing people get frustrated. I want to talk a little bit about the cultural differences again, just very specifically about, do you see politics or religion affecting the kind of care that people receive or ask for? Yeah,
I mean, one of the things that is asked, like for instance, and I also work with several Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like, when you're going in for some whatever type of treatment, it's like, do you have any beliefs that would keep you from, getting a blood transfusion? And because Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in, it's like, it's a whole thing. And so I don't want to get into it, and I don't want to, sure. But they're, they don't.
Yeah, it's not a
but if you're a child, I'm working in pediatrics, that it changes it. Like if your kid has leukemia, you're going to need blood transfusions. Yeah. So that becomes a thing. And I know that at one of the hospitals that I work with, there is somebody that helps the families navigate that because it is a religious thing. But again, it's with a minor, and that kind of changes things up because I have to receive treatment. And I know that you'll see it in the news sometimes, like the child is taken away. I've never seen it go to that extreme where the child gets taken away. But I have been like, you know, in terms of like faith and religion, it can go either way. Like, it can go, this is God's plan. And I've seen it go, this is God's plan. And God put the doctor to guide me.
Yeah.
And then I've also seen it go the other way, where the child or the patient needs a life-saving procedure. And they're like, no, God told me that they would be fine. And, you know, then all of a sudden I remember,
Not even like, it's God's plan that your kid's going to die if you don't do this. But,
I remember... And this is back like when COVID was happening. And here's the thing, I work all over the place because I am a freelance interpreter. So basically I go in to fill a need. There aren't enough interpreters in the hospital. The interpreters that are in-house a lot of the time have to be doing translations of documents and they can't be doing in-person interpretation. So there's like, okay, well, you know, we're good about giving each other's heads up. Sure. But like I remember, and it's like, oh yeah, you have a conference. And I'm like, okay. And it was like, with an ethics board. Oh, I walk in and I'm like, this is, and the worst part was that it was like over Zoom because this is a pandemic, so people were still working from home. It was about treatment. It was about believing that God was going to take care of things, and the chaplain is like, well, you know, what I said before is like, don't you think that maybe God has put these people in your path and just kind of trying to, and they're like, nope. And then, you know, at a certain point, because we're dealing with a child, it's like, well, we're just going to call DCFS. Yeah. Because it's like this child they have to have said procedure. It's going to affect them. And, you know, just because they're like, well, they survived this episode. And it's like, they're lucky they survived this episode. And the odds of something else happening are like high. Yeah. And so that's why we still have not discharged them. And I've seen it several times. It's not just a one-off. Sure. I remember talking to my mom, and that's the other thing. My baseline is very different. Okay. I have to remember that. There have been several times where families, so a G-tube is a sonda de gastrostomia. So it's a G-tube. It goes into the stomach, and that's how you feed your child. A lot of times, either kids are, for whatever reason, they end up needing one. It's like the fear that if the child can't swallow property. They swallow houses. I'm like, can you swallow a house for me? Because in this economy.
In this economy, I can only swallow a tiny home.
Yeah. No, properly. If they can't, and this is how you know I'm tired. Exactly. my brain is like, burr. So if they can't drink or swallow food properly, there's always a risk that it goes down the wrong way. It goes into the lungs. You get an infection, and some of these children end up having like multiple pneumonias and things like that. While they're learning how to feed, sometimes they will go in and do a G-tube so that the child is getting enough calories, because you need enough calories to live. But if you're constantly getting pneumonia and you're aspirating, that's an issue. And, you know, and so child is underweight. And, you know, one of the things I learned is like children, that's exercise for them. They expend a lot of energy. Babies expend a lot of energy feeding. So, like, you know, in the first, like, month they're born, and then they lose weight, and then they gain weight. You know, those are things that I've, like, learned. And then they're like, you know, when they're like, yeah, I know. I'm like, I know, right?
Like eating celery.
So they expend a lot of energy. So if they're taking too long to eat, or it's too hard for them, we're advanced enough now that it's simple procedure. But to me, I see them all the time. Yeah. I'm like, I see G-tubes all the time. I'm like, what's the big deal? I was talking to my mom. She's like, that's exactly the big deal. She's like, you see them every single day. These families don't. This is like, it is a real traumatizing thing. And I mean, I'll share this, like my family recently went through it, where my cousin, they were 18 when they had their twins, and one of them was born with cerebral palsy, medical malpractice. It was a whole thing, but their daughter's now in their 30s. The fact that she never had to have that procedure until now that she's in her 30s, and it was really hard for them to accept it. You know, they kept trying to avoid it, but she got to the point where it was getting really hard for her to eat. Yeah. And, you know, now she's doing a lot better. But it was really hard on my family. And then, you know, like, I think it helped when they were able to talk to me, because I was able to just kind of repeat. They're like, oh, yeah, the doctor told us that. And I was like, because I see it every day. But then, again, my baseline is different.
Sure.
And so culturally speaking, if we're going back to that, doctors see this every day and it becomes like not a big deal. And so sometimes that frustration of not knowing, and they have training around it and they know how to speak to families and they know that it's hard for them, but there is this like, just do it. Like sometimes it just
right.
like, just do the, like, and I'm not
sure.
saying that it's like in front of the families, but
for sure, no.
but even I like will step outside of the room and it's like, oh God, like you'll see people worry. So I think culturally speaking, like just hospital culture, doctors that see this every single day. Yep. So it becomes not as big of a thing. They're so used to doing them. The baseline is different. It's different for the family. It's different for providers.
Do you see, because there is definitely a bias, doctors ignoring women. Do you see that at all? Do you experience that?
I had an experience at a hospital where this woman was in chronic pain and she was older. And this was earlier in my interpretation career, so it was. I feel like I could have handled it differently. I'll say that.
Sure.
But in my experience, where I had been working at another hospital that was very attentive to their patients, I thought it was going to go a different way.
Sure.
And so I was doing what's called a site translation. All the documents were in English, so I was helping her fill them out by translating what was on the page, and then she was answering, and I was helping her. I got to the point. It's like, have you ever felt like you want harm yourself? And she's like, every day. I can't. This is too much pain, And she said that. And I go, okay. And so she put, yes. So when they saw that, they're like, you have to go to the emergency room. Instead of actually giving her the treatment. And I called my agency and told them I did not like the way that this was handled.
Yeah.
She's an older woman. She's in pain. She's expressing this. And she was dismissed they just passed her off to the emergency room, which is not what she needed.
No.
And then I'm like, because it's like, this is what she's telling me. I'm also a mandated reporter. So yeah, she did say these things.
Yep.
And so, but it's like, sometimes you're just like, I wish she wouldn't have said that,
Right, like nuts.
God,
I got to put that down. Yeah.
Yeah, so like things like that have happened, and it's like people don't want to take responsibility, so they just want to pass people off to the next person. And I was really angry. That one was, I remember being livid about that one.
For sure.
And there have been other moments where patients, if they don't have someone advocating for them, they will be dismissed in a lot of different ways. But that one really just
sticks out to you.
Yeah, because she was older. She was, she was in pain, and she said she wanted to self-harm. But you giving her treatment is,
It's going to help that.
Yeah.
Like, it's because she was in pain.
Yeah.
Is that like they don't want to give people
No, because
drugs?
she was at a pain clinic, but because she said she wanted to harm and she was having thoughts of suicide, they didn't want to handle it. And they were like rushing her out. I literally had to like look at the one who was like, do you see how old she is? I was like, and that's where that advocacy part of my job came in, because yes, I'm being rushed out with her, and I was like, no, and so it was just one of those things, I waited with her like for her son to come, and there's only so much I can do. The only other thing that I could do was call my agency, let them know what happened, and just be like, I'm just like, this is not okay. Like, I don't know that this should have been handled this way. But after that, I don't know that anything was done about it. Sometimes, unless like I get to see the patient like long term, and I don't know what
happens after the visit, for sure. Oh, I would imagine you just are there and
you're like, okay, I hope, yeah.
Have you had any experience speaking with people or interpreting regarding motherhood or reproductive rights or reproductive health?
I have worked at clinics that provide reproductive health to women, and I remember one of the clinics, it's like, it's like no cost, and it's been a while since I've done one of those. It used to be like a morning clinic. It was like 8 to 12 or whatever, and it was like the semi-retired doctor. It was interesting because he and the nurse, they talk about like the days when like people were just like protesting outside, but he's like, but then you'd see people like that are protesting you and calling people a baby killer, but then they go around the back to go get the abortion. He's like, do you have any idea how many people like would do that? And he's like, yep, they just go around the back and get the abortion for themselves, then go right back to screaming at everybody. It happens because it's always different when it's you.
Oh, for sure.
It's always different when it's you.
My decision is the right way.
Fine. And I mean, I've seen like there at one of these particular clinics, I was interpreting, or I've interpreted for people that like have never had any type of healthcare surrounding like gynecology or anything like that, because they either come from like areas where like people just don't go to the doctor, right? Like it's rural areas from Latin America. Like maybe the reason that they're getting it is because somebody in their family passed away from a cancer, and then like they maybe got in touch with a social worker, and the social worker's like, maybe y'all should go, you know, what do you mean you've never had? I've had that. And so these little clinics that, you know, that are in the community are so important because they provide these types of like basic services, which is like your annual PAP, your annual like pelvic exam. Not, you know, pap smears like every few years, guidelines have changed.
Yeah. Oh my God. Every year it changes so that we're just kept confused.
Yeah.
And when you say the smaller clinics, they're like independent.
Well, they're like, you know, there's one, it's like in the Valley that I used to go to. It's called MEND. So it's like, and I forget what the acronym stands for, but it's like, they're clinics that provide like basic healthcare. Like there's a Valley clinic, and they do like, you know, sexual health for teenagers, sexual health, free HIV testing. I go and get my like free HIV test like once a year because I just have a thing about like just getting tested once a year because I'm a whore. Sinner.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
It's just, it's
Meanwhile, I'm like, send me that address.
Yeah, no, I know. So it's like, but these community clinics and that I've interpreted, you know, just throughout, they are super important.
Oh, for sure. The only way that I've really heard about them was through independent abortion clinics and stuff like that, which you can go to. You don't have to go to Planned Parenthood and the bigger ones. You can go to your local independent clinic for gynecological health and stuff, and then also.
And then if you do need one, they can, you know, if they can't provide those services, they can definitely guide you. Yeah. And let you know, like, this is where you need to go. You know, it just depends on what the facilities can or can't do. You know,
for sure. Yeah. That's really cool. I didn't expect us to talk about that. That's really interesting.
I'm like, I had to like kind of go back because it's like, I'm like, oh shit, I've been doing this for like over 10 years now, and I have been all sorts of places.
For sure. Are there any stories that pop up to you that are like anything that you're like, oh, this really made me mad, or this really was inspiring, or like a story that you want to share?
I think, you know, when we talk about like culture and we talk about like abortion and we talk about like things that are not talked about, you know, I was raised Catholic, and abortion is a sin. And, you know, you've met my mom. Yeah. And she's like, who am I to judge? You know, like she's kind of like that. She's very, she's very like, you know, you had your shirt when she met you. Like,
yes, I was like, oh no.
Made in a bed abortion. And, like, and my mom's like, yeah, that's, you know, I know who my daughter is. I know who her friends are. Yeah. And she's not, I don't know that she's like, I think she's for herself, she could never do it. But again, we're talking about choice, right? Like she could never do it, but she's not one to judge somebody for what they do. It's like she'll whisper, she was like, you know, one of your aunt's friends had an abortion. She didn't tell anybody, but your aunt, she would go and, you know, while she was healing, she would go and get her food. So it's like women do it, they take care of each other. And even if they're like, oh, how could you, like culturally, they'll still like on the DL, you know, like they don't talk about it. My mom, because she has a big mouth, and she'll tell me everything. She's like
she's
the one
so
that,
great.
Yeah. So she'll be like, oh yeah, your Tia's friend, she, you know, she had an abortion, and then your Tia was the one that, you know, even though my Tia will be like, I would never have an abortion, you know, like, but it's like at the end of the day, it's like people always make the exception for the people that they love. Yeah. And then we got to think somebody is someone's exception.
Exactly.
And it's like, you know someone that had an abortion.
You love someone who's had an abortion.
Yeah, it's like everyone knows someone. Yeah. You know, the other side of it is in working with, like, there's the fetal maternal clinic where, like, if there's something going on with the baby's heart, you know, they can go in and do surgery now, or they can, or like, if you know you're, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes parents do know when their baby is coming with, like, some type, and then they choose, you know, they choose, they make the choice, and it's put on the table for them. Like, do you want to terminate this or do you not? I have been in the room where culturally people have been raised to have the child. And so there was never any doubt in their mind of having the child. Yeah. But then the child is born with, let's say, something like trisomy 18, which is a horrible genetic, you know, the expectancy of these children is not very...
Like, they're going to die within
like
a week
the year. Like, sometimes, like, you know, if they're lucky, like, if they can... But it's
a horrible life, right? It's
and a painful life.
Yeah,
it's painful. And, you know, and or any other type of genetic disorder, you know, and sometimes the parents go, maybe I should have if I had known what this was.
Oh, yeah.
Because I don't want to see my child, like, I no longer want to see my child suffer. And maybe it was the selfish choice. And I love what palliative care always says, because palliative care is like, you know, it's usually like people, the team that comes in when it's like either the person is very chronically sick or, you know, end of life care. A lot of times when people blame themselves or anything, it's like you do the best with the information you have.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like you have to empower people with as much information as possible.
Yes.
Like, you know, and so like when it comes to like abortion rights and like all this misinformation that is out there, and then people make choices based on that misinformation as well.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying, you know, like everybody knows what they can bear, you know, like, you know, because I know that this religion is a big part of what you did with the Ballad of Dena and Andrea, you know?
Yeah.
So growing up, my mom goes, you don't know what cross people are bearing. Like everybody has a cross to bear and you don't know. So like some people, shit happens and your kid does not come into this world healthy and they're going to have a lot of issues and they're going to need a lot of help. And some people, you know, they allow their children to thrive. Just, it all depends. And some people
don't have the resources.
Don't have the resources and have to choose. You know, I used to work at a domestic violence shelter for 5 years. I worked at a domestic. One of the things that we did was help women get abortions.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that abusers do is keep women pregnant.
Yes.
Because if you, it becomes very difficult to leave if you have a child.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And yet one of the largest reasons why women die when they're pregnant is because they're killed by their abuser.
Because when you're pregnant, the violence in the relationship actually goes up.
Yeah.
It increases.
Oh.
And that is something that they know, that if a woman is pregnant, they are more likely to, like, and that was, you know, when I was doing that work, we had women that would come in and, you know, they already had 3 mouths to feed. Yeah. They already had children and they were trying to get away from their abuser, and they were going to be more likely to do it if they were able to have an abortion.
Exactly.
So that was one thing that I remember when I worked at the shelter. It was like a thing that we did. Like, it was like, oh, you know, and it was, no, you want an abortion? Great. Like,
that
we
is
will get it for you.
necessary healthcare.
Yeah. And if you don't want one,
safety.
And if you don't want one, that's fine too. It's interesting because my mom, I feel like her faith makes her a better person. I grew up in a very, like, God is love sort of thing, from her at least.
Sure.
She's very devout, you know, like after somebody passes away, you pray the rosary for 9 nights. It's a thing. So, and she's one of the people that people call if somebody's passed away. So I would constantly go with her, you know, to pray the rosary.
And what does that mean, to go pray the rosary?
It's like la novena, like it's called the novena. I don't know how you say it in English because this is like I grew up. Oh, by the way, like me, like my Catholicism is in Spanish. Do not ask me to, like, if I go to church in English, I do not know. I mean, like, I understand, but I was like, wait, what do I say? Like, peace be with you. Like, and over the years I've caught it, but it's like I only really know Mass in Spanish because I grew up going to Mass in Spanish.
Sure.
And I did my catechism in Spanish, and I did all of these things in Spanish. So it's like La Novenaria, which is like the 9 nights, and like you pray the rosary. People gather. It's almost like I don't want to compare it, but it's just a ritual. It's a ritual after death, you know, like it's like Shiva. Yeah. But it's like it's not the same thing. But it's like but you know, you do bring food. Actually, there was one part that was like my favorite part because it's like it's very repetitive. They go through like all the like iterations of like the Virgin Mary and like because you know where she's appeared or whatever, and like pray for us. But it gets like really dramatic, and then I'm like yes, pray for it.
Like what? Oh my gosh, I'm so interested in this. Because ritual, we all want rituals, or not all of us, but people want rituals.
Well, it's important. I think it is very important for us to, as people, like when somebody passes away, when somebody is born, like the way I look at it, it's like to recognize it, to do something for yourself. You need to acknowledge, like we all, if we live long enough, we'll have periods in our life where people are constantly, like a few years ago, like 2013 to like 2016, I had a freaking funeral dress. Like and it was this thing that...
Yeah, that was a rough year.
It was it was a rough couple of years, and it was just like, oh my God, who else is dying? People were passing away. I literally had my funeral dress. Like I still have that dress, but it was like what I would wear to all these funerals.
Yeah.
So ritual is important. You know, for some people, I think religion like I said earlier, it's like some people are like, this is part of, like it helps them.
Right, makes them a better person. That was interesting.
And it makes... My mom's faith makes her a better person.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people like that. And then there are some people that it makes them a worse person.
Right.
But I think it just has to do with the type of person you already are.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because you use it. It's this thing that you use, like we talk about cherry picking. It's like, well, you choose how you... I was like,
you're picking the cherries.
Yeah,
right,
you're picking the cherries. And I remember she was going to like one of her like friends that she grew up to, they decided to do like a Bible study, and then they brought someone in to help. And that person started going off on single mothers. My mom is a single mother. My mom immediately was like, no, thank you. And then she like got up, she left, and we left. And I was like, why are we going? She's like, no. And she was like, no, so she like immediately got up, and I will always remember it because I was outside playing, like, and she was in the Bible study, and she left, and she was like, no, they were like bashing single. She's like, I'm a single mother. Your tia's a single mother.
Right.
Like your grandmother raised us on her own. It's like your grandmother's been married 3 times. Like, and that's kind of the thing. Like, I mean, I think, like as Catholics, we vary, and we're very...
Yeah, for sure.
And I say, because I was raised Catholic, but I'm like kind of a lapsed Catholic. Like the more I've worked in healthcare, the less I believe in God. I'm just like, I'm an atheist. Yeah. I think my working in healthcare, maybe some people like, it's like, oh, I see God.
You're like, nope,
there is no God. like there is no God.
Just dealing with health insurance and health companies, I know there is no God.
I guess it's, for me, I am in the room and I am having to repeat what everyone is saying in the room. And I am having to give news. Mm-hmm. I'm having to sometimes interpret a diagnosis. Yeah. Something that's inoperable, something that is... You have 6 months, maybe. You have this, you have that. And it bugs me that, people are like, maybe if I would have prayed hard enough, or, maybe God, this is God's plan. And I'm like, if God does exist, he's a really shitty dad. Or he's,
right. He's a real jerk.
He's a real jerk and doesn't really care, and it just makes me like, I would rather put my faith in people. And that's kind of where in doing this job, I see the grace that people allow each other, how compassionate, and how even when the doctors are frustrated with the patient or the patient is frustrated with the doctors, I've seen doctors before they go into the room struggle with like, they want the best outcome for their patient. Yeah. As an actor, you kind of see that inner struggle, and you're like, oh, there's always that part of me that's like,
let me learn what I can from this human experience.
But it is that human experience, right? But it's like it's this human experience of like just this human being that has all this training and can no longer do anything, and how shitty that feels, or how great it feels when it's like, oh, this, like, we got it, we did it, we figured it out, and you're gonna go home. So it's like you see people, you see their humanity, and you see them at their worst moments, you see them at their, that's a part of the job that I'm like, I don't believe in God as much. Mm-hmm. But I do believe in people, and people rise to the occasion, like where people go, I don't know how you do that job. And I go, because it's kind of amazing and incredible to watch like parents rise, like going like, or like patients like not being able to like walk, and then like all of a sudden, I'll see them, and I've been interpreting for them in like the ICU, and then they're in physical therapy, and they look a hot mess, and someone would be like, I'm like, you don't understand, like they couldn't even like chew on ice before, but now they're like semi-walk, it's like, it's this thing of
real miracles.
And it's like, but people
are doing that.
People are doing that. And some of them really do hold on to their faith. Yeah. And you don't want them to lose that.
Right, because if that is what is getting someone through.
Yeah, and so I'm like, and then so like, I'm not opposed to like, I was like, if that, then great. Like, that's why I always use my mother as an example. And I see other people, but for me, it's like, it's not my jam.
It's not what brings you. Right, it's not my jam.
It's not my jam.
Exactly.
It's not what brings me, but people do. People do. And the way I see people time and time again just kind of but actually rise to the occasion and supersede other people's expectations. And the way I see parents advocate for their children sometimes. And then sometimes the ones that are really frustrating, you kind of have to step back and be like, well, you have to fight for your child, even though you may not be doing it in the, but.
That is really beautiful. I'm sitting here getting tears in my eyes. Let's quit talking about sex.
I'm like, we can talk about sex because I love talking about sex. And I was a sex health educator at that too.
I'm like, what did we talk about that one night? And we were like, yes, we have to talk about that. And maybe it was HPV, but I've talked about HPV a million,
yeah, it's like,
so much.
I mean, like, get the vaccine, people. Just get the vaccine.
Get the vaccine.
Get the vaccine, and just know that if you're giving a blowjob,
you can still get
it.
HPV.
Yeah, because you get it in your throat. That's why Michael Douglas, he said, I ate a lot of pussy or something like that.
That's right.
I'm like, you had your fun. I mean, like, people.
I know. What's the trade-off? To never have oral sex?
I mean, yeah, or use a dental dam. Which
like the way we said it is how
use a dental dam, especially. Damn it.
Damn it. Just damn it.
And if you don't have a dental dam and you have a condom available, you can just split it down the middle, cut it down the middle, and that makes a dental dam. That's what we used to tell the teenagers. None of them, I'm sure you.
Wouldn't that taste delicious?
That latex and that.
Oh my God.
We used to always tell them, well, there's flavored lubricants and like, which are gross.
Oh, they're so bad. I wonder if there is any good tasting lube. Like, have a lube tasting.
So
I will go into this. Do you, and you really don't have to, do you want to share anything about your relationship to motherhood or your body or childbearing? Yeah, like how do you feel about that?
I saw the question because you sent me ahead of time, and I've heard the podcast. Like I've been listening to the podcast as well, and it's interesting because I was like, what does this bring up for me? I think I always grew up with the idea that I was going to be a mother because I think that's, and culturally, like, I grew up with a mother who loved being a mother.
Yeah.
Even like my cousins and like like her nieces and nephews, and she was always the one that took care of it. And she said it when she was like, I was ready to be a mom at like 5, like that was innately who she is.
She just knew.
She just knew it. She wanted to be a mother. And I love kids. I love being around kids. I love working with teenagers and middle schoolers, and I love and so I always thought I was going to be a mother. But then I'm single, I'm not married, and I'm like, I'm not opposed to not having children, like if it happened.
Sure.
But I'm 40.
Right.
I'm 40. I'm not 50, but I'm 40. And so it's just one of those things where, is it going to happen? And very possible that it might not. If it did, I'd be like a geriatric pregnancy.
Oh my God. Oh, you're a geriatric pregnancy at like 28,
I know,
right?
36.
36, geez.
35, 36 or something like that. You're considered a geriatric pregnancy.
That is, the language
and
needs to change.
Yeah, it does.
Or maybe I just need to not think that geriatric is a bad word.
Maybe
that.
It could go either way.
Either way.
But when we think about geriatric healthcare, it means like the third age. So that's why. It's like, really? But it's like you're in your last legs of
my God.
But it's like that episode of Parks and Rec where she gets the triplets and they're like, oh yeah, it was like going out of business sale. That's how she got the triplets when she got pregnant or whatever.
Sure.
Like, anyway, so I was like, well,
maybe it'll be a go no.
Maybe.
My mom had me when she was 40.
Like, I read somewhere that like women that have kids later on in life actually live longer.
Whoa.
And cut that with like, what we're talking about, like people that are 5'6" or under, and I'm 5'6",
right.
live longer. Because if you're tall, you're not going to live as long, people. Just need to break
you heard it here.
But anyway,
I'm 4'11". I'm going to live forever.
Forever. We're just going to be in the home. You and I. Just
very tiny people in the very tiny home.
With the kid who swallowed it. What was it earlier today?
Oh, that's right.
That swallowed the property.
I know. We're inside the home, inside the property.
He swallowed the property properly. He properly swallowed the property. That's a tongue twister. But no.
What were we talking about?
About motherhood.
Oh, right.
This is why I'm not a mom.
Oh, exactly. We're like, da 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 da.
This is why I should not be a mother. It's a thing, right? I remember, like, culturally, it's like you don't really become a woman until you're a mother and all that. Right. And then also having these conversations with my own mother, and then her kind of coming to terms that, I may not have children. And she's like, you don't have, like, I know that she's like, I think that's a mentality you're raised with because that is the culture. She goes, but I'm very lucky in the sense that, despite her growing up in a very conservative, very patriarchal, but like also matriarchal, like our family in itself is like matriarchal, and she's very much like, no, you live your life, and you know, if children come, great. If not, you know, the dog's my grandson. But it has been like also kind of grieving that too, grieving what you thought it was going to be, and then what it is. I think it could happen, but also I'm on birth control. You know, it's like the odds of it happening, unless I plan it, are very, very slim. Though my family at this point would be like, we don't care who the dad is. It's like, it's fine. Like, it's like, go get knocked up, you know.
We'll play with it.
Well, we'll play with it. You know, so it's, you know, I'm of the age that if I did accidentally, I'd probably maybe keep it. I don't know, because I'd be
I know. I kept thinking that. I'm like, oh, I think that ship has sailed.
Yeah. So for me, it's like, I'm like, it's sailing away. It's getting ready to leave the dock. So
and I think that is, like you mentioned, like a grieving process, and like, it really wasn't for me because I knew I didn't want them, but like that is a real thing to be able to, like, we're talking about rituals and stuff. It's like, yeah, that's an okay thing to grieve. That's a big thing.
Well, I think that for me, I was never opposed to having children, and it wasn't like necessarily a choice that I made. It was a choice that life made for me.
Yeah.
It just didn't work out that way. So I think that there's also that side to it. You know, it's like some people want children and they seek it out and they will do anything. And then you have people like me, it's like, it would have been great.
Yeah, but it didn't happen.
But it didn't happen. But
I feel like that is a huge population of women. Mm-hmm. And like,
especially
and that
now.
it isn't like what am I trying to say? It's not like oh my God, I never had that in my life. But it is something that's but I can't now. So that's something I need to grapple with.
It's a reframing, because it's like I did play with dolls.
Yeah.
I did, you know, and I love holding babies. I love it. And I do wonder, I'm like, well, what would it be like to be pregnant?
What would it be like to be, I sometimes wonder that too.
It's like, would I be one of those, you know, like some people, I have a friend that she loves, like, she's not like she was pregnant all the time, but like when she was pregnant, she like her 2 pregnancies, she loved it. And then like my cousin, she was like, fuck no. She was like, I was miserable. So like there is a part of me that wonders, like, what would my pregnancy have been like?
I just know I would be a horrible mess. I just the way that my period hormones affect me, I'm like,
you'd be like,
oh my God, and just crying. I know I would be sad all the time. Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know. I wonder, and maybe. I'm like, I also have ADHD. Like, what would I forget? Well, my mom, I'm sure has
it in the tub.
Well, my mom also has ADHD, even though she's like not officially diagnosed. She left my ass in the stroller parking at Disneyland, okay? As she went to go get into the fucking Alice in Wonderland, like.
And you will not let her live it down.
Oh, hell no. I bring it up every chance I get. I was like, remember that time you abandoned me? I was 8 months old. She was like, the way she tells it is like, yeah, like I parked, I was just talking, and then like I was in line, I was like, I'm missing something.
So I think I left my purse, or
like, oh shit, my child, my baby. But, and the thing is, as an actor, a lot of what I get called in for are mothers. Oh. I mean, Alma.
Yeah,
mother.
Alma. She's up for an award, by the way, playing the Alma.
Thank you. But,
Best actress.
But it is this thing of like, as an actor, I do have to interpret motherhood. I do interact with a lot of mothers on a daily basis. Like, I see mothers every single day. So for me, it's like motherhood is a part of my life. It's a part of everyone's life. Like, you know someone who's had an abortion, you know a mother. Like, it's like you know, people.
Yeah, I don't feel it's like a concept that no one can understand.
But it's also like a thing. It's like, we know what it's like to be a cisgendered woman, and no one is going to take that experience away from us. No one is going to, like, I don't, that type of pain that I've seen of somebody losing, because I've seen people lose a child. I can't imagine. No. But I can't imagine loss. Like, I've had loss.
We can all empathize with, like, I don't mean like yes, there is something different about motherhood that I will not experience, and I respect that. And I have,
and again, that's like the thing that I like lately have been grieving, because it's like, okay, the ship is sailing, and unless like I jump and like go, like, hold on. Like, there it is. It's like, it's starting to leave the dock. Like,
Sure.
like, so
Yeah.
it's just a thing. It's like, oh shit, didn't happen for me. So what is this going to look like? What is this other half of my life now, the next 40 years going to look like?
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that children aren't going to be a part of my life. It means other things are going to be a part of my life. It means that I get up whenever the fuck I want.
Right. You can travel whenever you want.
Yeah,
at
and
the
I don't
drop
have
of
to.
a-
Yeah, it's like
You don't
there's
have
these
to pay
other.
for a kid.
Yeah, I don't have to pay. They're fucking expensive.
Oh my God.
Cut to like, I'm like, Becky, I'm pregnant.
Exactly.
Probably not. Probably not. My Nuva ring is still in.
I had to whip my Nuva ring out. Oh my God.
The first time around, I was the same way, and then I tried it again, and it works.
Oh, yeah. Nope. This was like last year, and I really was like just dropped depression crazy, fling it across the room.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'm on Lexapro, but I don't know if it's about the Nuva ring, because I've been on the Nuva ring for like since 2021 now.
yeah.
2021.
Some people love them.
Oh, I gotta love it. I do. I like it. I like knowing exactly when I'm gonna get my period. And I also like preventing my period if need be.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I feel like I like my period. I mean, I'm happy to not have it again and go through menopause. It doesn't matter if I like it or not. It's going to happen. But like doing the never having a period thing, I'm like, oh, I sort of like my cycle with the moon.
I mean, sure.
Right? But I also don't have a very complicated period, except for SADS.
I love, like, if we're talking about periods, I love the Diva cup. I love my Diva. And when I, have it, but then I'm also like, this last time around, I was like, usually I get a TMI, but also this is a podcast for women.
Anyone who gets a period.
Anyone, yes, menstruating people. It's anyone who has a fucking uterus. And I kind of just like usually I would get like breakthrough bleeding.
Okay.
And
that would
like
be really annoying.
yeah, and when I would try to like wear it consecutively, so I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna get my period. But this time around, I was like, I started leaving it in like a week longer, because you can leave it in for like 4 weeks.
Yep.
And then
not get it.
usually I used to get like a little bit of breakthrough bleeding before the end of the 4th week. But this time around I didn't. And I was like, ooh.
You stopped it up.
Yeah. And then I was like, oh, I could just switch it. And then like I did. And then I haven't had it in like 2 months. Wow. So, and I was like, I like having this control.
Yeah.
And
that's cool.
Yeah. So it's
It's a choice you make about your own body.
About my own body.
Gee.
About my own body. And it's, so it's bodily autonomy.
Bodily autonomy.
Yeah, and it's awesome. And I love it. And I like having control of my body.
Yes, absolutely. No, and that... They're going to come after birth control if we don't stop.
Yeah. And people are going to keep having sex.
They are.
And
people are going to keep having sex.
And they're going to keep getting abortions.
Yep.
Whatever way they can. So
yep, we will find... It never has not happened. It's never going to not happen.
I think it's just the way we behave as human beings. And it's like you're going... it's that thing that we're talking about earlier. It's like you're going to go around the back. You're going to shout and be like, we won. And then you're going to,
You're going to still get what people need, which is this healthcare. Yeah.
We make sex to be this, like... like puritanical views about sex, and I'm like, to me, like, sex is life. It can be gleeful, it can be joyful, it can be hilarious, because it is. It can be passionate.
Lots
it can also be
noises.
Horrifying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, it's like every single emotion that we experience, we can experience it through sex.
Yeah, sexually,
and so
for sure.
sex is life. It's life. And I mean, it is literally what leads to life. But we somehow demonize it and like make it this like weird thing. Yeah. And it's like, no, it's like sex. We should talk about it more.
If we did, we would have just that open communication about it, and would be just helpful for everybody. Wow. What a profound thing I just said.
Postpartum is one of the things that I do see a lot. Like, they ask mothers and things like that. And sometimes it's interesting to see. There was one time I was in a room, we're doing a family conference, and, they were asking the mother about postpartum, and she was having a very difficult time expressing it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until her sister, who was in the room, said, I suffered from postpartum. And she said, I didn't know. And she was like, I was very ashamed, and I never really talked about it. I did eventually talk to my provider about it, but I never really spoke to the family about it, but I feel like we should talk about it. You know, it's something that culturally we don't talk about. We don't talk about postpartum. We don't talk about you're supposed to be a happy mother. You're supposed to, you know, be all these things, and you know, all these women are secretly. So it was a very interesting moment for me, you know, like interpreting this back and forth, and her sister revealing that, and then she goes, "You did," and then she goes, "Yes, I did." Like it was like this moment of,
and they never talked about it
until they were in this family conference. It is something that does need to be spoken about, but then the reverse of that is, I've also seen it where it's maybe not postpartum, but the mother has expressed, or someone has expressed that, you know, I'm depressed, I want to, and then their children get taken away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's like we need to talk about these things openly, and we need to talk about taking your children away is not going to fix that.
It's not going to fix that. It's not the issue.
Yeah, that's not the issue. And the reason, you know, sometimes said mothers is because they're depressed because they don't have housing. They don't have this. And if you fix these things, like in one particular case, like, mother said, I'm drowning. But it was like not making enough money to be housed, having a sick child, missing appointments because they're trying, and, you know, and so at a certain point, social services becomes involved, but then they become the bad guy because they're like, well, you can't take care of your kids. Okay, put you away. Like we're taking your kids from you. They're going to foster care, and foster care is a toss-up.
Oh, man.
Like, foster care can be, like, if you get a great foster parent, that's amazing. That's great. That's awesome. But there are horror stories in foster care.
Oh, my God. All of the kids we worked with at camps.
Yeah. So we work together in
juvenile justice system.
Yes. So we've worked together in that. We know how bad it can be.
Yeah.
We know, and they have their stories that they would tell us. And, you know, it's a toss-up.
Yeah.
Because our system is so fucked up in
Giving
terms
people
of
garbage bags to carry their clothes from point A to point B.
Yeah, and things like that. And then the fact that, you know, you are more susceptible to being abused, sexually abused. I mean, I don't know what the statistics are, so please don't quote me on them.
But they're bad.
But, you know, it's like, you know, what happened at LA County with the juvenile justice system, where so many kids were being assaulted by
the staff.
So you have this system that tells you to speak up, but then when they do, you get punished for it.
Yeah.
So people are afraid to speak to social workers. People are afraid to say, I'm depressed. Or people are afraid to, you know, say these things. And it really is the luck of the draw. Did you get the social worker that was empathetic?
Right.
Did you get the social worker that is going to try for you? Or did you get the one that's overworked and doesn't care anymore?
Yeah.
Or did you get the one that is a straight up bitch and was like, well, fuck you and I don't care about you, you know.
Yeah. All I heard was this.
Yeah. And it's, so.
What do you think the solution is there? I mean, obviously.
Other than dismantling the whole entire system?
Yes. Other than burning it down. Which, you know, if we have to.
I mean.
But like, talking about it more in maybe, because I am trying to think, because I wouldn't want somebody to put themselves in danger and reach out to a social worker who they don't trust. But how do they, I guess there's resources like postpartum.net, which we
I mean, I think it's about community, right? It's about, I think for us, I don't have an answer for that. All I can say is that you have to start small and you have to be that person for someone.
Yeah,
you know,
like us childless cat ladies will listen.
Yes, the childless cat ladies. This is where we come into play. You know, for anyone listening that is a social worker, don't be that social worker. Or anybody, you know, but the system is overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And I don't think anything's going to change until we address people's basic needs. If you need to be housed, you need to have access to contraception, you need education, you need basic education, you need living wages, we need healthcare that is not dependent on our jobs.
Yes.
It's all connected.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. We all depend on one another, and we have to build community that cares about each other and that is collaborative. And that's one of the things I do appreciate about working in the hospital is that it is a collaborative effort when it's done right. You know, from the cleaning lady who makes sure that those rooms are clean, or the cleaning people that make sure that those rooms are clean so that the next patient doesn't catch something, to the, you know, doctor who's making those decisions, to making sure they have an interpreter like me so that they're communicating in the patient. You know, it's like to the nurses who are doing the day-to-day. People have to work together, and we have to work together. So this whole idea of like, I'm the solution, or I'm this, or, you know, you people that are, it's like we and we come from a theater background. It's collaborative.
It's
You need the stage manager, you need the director, you need the actors, you need the set designers, and that is what life is. It's a collaboration.
Yeah.
So community, it's like we just have to build community amongst ourselves, and but I don't have a big response to like how do we change it.
But that's a beautiful response. That's how we start, and it's like changing our mind to ask the people in our lives who are having children, like, do you want me to come over for an hour and do your dishes or whatever?
Yeah. And also just think.
Not that I'm doing that.
I know.
I feel like there's mothers out there who are like, Becky, you can't be around my kids.
I think it goes both. I think it goes both ways. Like I had a friend who I invited her. Like I'm like, I know this is last minute. She's like, I can't come, but she was like, you know what? But thank you for not assuming that I automatically wouldn't can't because I now have children.
Yeah.
And I think it goes both ways. Like just because you have kids doesn't mean I'm not willing to hang out with you and your kids. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, yes, your life changed. You have children now. I mean, I have a friend, I go to the beach with her and her kids will be like, let's go do a beach. She's like, oh, I have the kids. I'm like, I don't care. And like, that's just me as a friend. And then there are some times where it's like, maybe no kids tonight, you know?
Right. I plan on drinking copious amounts.
Yes.
So, right.
Yeah. So, but also we were drinking and we had her son take pictures of us.
Oh my gosh.
Pose,
right. I remember going to dinner parties with my parents. I loved it because I felt like a little adult.
Yeah. And I was a little adult too, you know. But it is that. It is like, yes, people turn into mothers, their lives change. And we need to be supportive of that, but then like not also assume that that's entirely who they are. So like, still like last minute ask your friend, even though the odds are that she might say no, you might be pleasantly surprised.
Right.
You just don't know.
Real quick, last question. Thank you, by the way. This has just been really great to like not be interrupted by Witcher, the dog.
My son. I'm not a cat mom right now. I'm a dog mom, but he's a brat. He's a demon.
He's a little demon. He's so cute and evil. But are there any organizations or artists or companies, podcasts doing good work right now that you'd like to shout out?
There is one particular organization. It's called Cielo. And the woman that runs it, she used to be a freelance interpreter, and she's still an interpreter with indigenous languages from Mexico, like Zapotec and Mixteco and things like that. Because I'm a Spanish interpreter, but there are many, many other languages spoken south of the border that are indigenous languages, and she works with indigenous populations here in Southern California, getting them interpretation resources, and it's called cielo.org, I believe. Okay. She taught me a lot about people that identify as indigenous and the whole Latino indigenous. That's a whole other podcast. But she's doing really great interpretation work in terms of getting indigenous people the resources they need around interpretation for their languages, because I cannot tell you how many times I've walked into a room and the person doesn't really speak Spanish. They speak an indigenous language, and it is also important that they get the services they need. So yeah, that organization is doing really, really good work.
Right. In the hospitals specifically?
Hospitals, courts. She's been doing a lot of work. She runs it with her daughter. It's her family. They do some really awesome work. During the pandemic, they were putting out kind of like these PSAs with indigenous languages in different indigenous languages people were getting. She was trying to get that information out to people. And she was actually shot out by Lizzo. Like, I don't know if you remember when she received the People's... And she had all the activists.
Yeah.
She was one of the... Yeah. She was one of the activists.
That's so awesome.
So Comunidades Indígenas en Liderazgo. Yeah, so that is indigenous communities in leadership is basically what it would translate to.
And it's My Cielo.
My Cielo, yeah.
Yeah, M-Y.
So that's a really, it's a local, they're based here in Los Angeles, and they do a lot of stuff around the indigenous communities, and it's needed, and it's growing. Those are the people that are even more disadvantaged, because it is even harder to find someone who speaks their language, who can... If Spanish speakers are on the periphery, like they are way out there, and they deserve the same services.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing this whole conversation.
Thank you for letting me talk. I was like, what am I going to say? Am I not going to have enough to say? I think I do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could listen to more and more and more. Love you.
Love you too. I'll see you at home.
If you'd like more information on postpartum psychosis and depression, please go to postpartum.net. There are additional links to mental health, safety, and reproductive resources in the show notes, as well as links to information mentioned in this show. You can listen to the full album of songs for the Ballad of Dena and Andrea on Spotify or Apple, wherever you find your music. Songs were written by me, Becky Poole, and produced by award-winning multi-instrumentalist, songwriter, and incredible music producer, Abby Posner. Find her at abbyposner.com. Theme also composed and played by Abby. Special thank yous to Evan Mosier for audio editing and mixing, to Andrew and the team at Voice Tracks West in Los Angeles, and to you for listening. Please join me in future episodes as we explore more themes around the Ballad of Dena and Andrea.